Hey guys, it's Kevin again. This is my review for American Horror Story Freak Show, Episode 11, Magical Thinking. And I had very mixed feelings about, what I was going to think of this episode because the past two episodes have been very all over the place. They have not been very good. It seemed like this season went completely out of focus, like they didn't really know what they wanted to do with it anymore. But I gotta say, this episode completely improved everything, really. I was so much more into this episode tonight. I was so much more into the show. I was surprised by how into stuff I was. Now, there were problems with this episode. Some stuff was very predictable, but a lot of the things I really loved. It didn't focus on love triangles tonight, so that's a good thing. We didn't have a lot of Maggie tonight, which was also good because that really is my problem with the show. Not a lot of Stanley either, minus the first scene. And I gotta say, the direction they're heading for these last two episodes, I'm looking forward to. And now finally it's back. I'm so happy it is because I'm gonna tell you guys something. Every single episode, even though episodes I didn't really like, I went into with an open mind. I wanted to really enjoy because I do enjoy this show. And every week, I want to enjoy the show. It's just they weren't giving me what I wanted. And this episode finally gave me what I wanted, which is some real creepy characters, some really messed up storylines that actually make you care for the characters, that actually make sense and don't just like go completely out of character. This episode actually went with their characters. It didn't just, completely feel random. And I think that's really good that it did that. And I'm very happy that the show is back because I think these final three episodes are actually going to be the best ones, really. And honestly, this was probably the best episode of the season. I would have to say that. Best episode of the season. So into this episode. Probably the most I was into since Bloodbath. I wasn't into an episode since then, and this episode I was so into. I loved it. So, I have to admit, though, let's get to the first scene. I did not like the first scene at all. It was just so predictable. Literally, guys, I said I know how this scene is gonna go. Stanley visits Jimmy and Jay. We see 2 days later. 2 days ago, I'm like, okay, here's what's gonna happen. Stanley's gonna give Jimmy some kind of ultimatum to cut off his hands, and Jimmy's gonna say no, but Stanley's gonna somehow do it, and that's exactly what ends up happening. He talks him into it, but Jimmy, doesn't really want this to happen, but he then agrees to this, and makes him drink this thing that makes him violently ill, so he has to go to the hospital. And the second he gave him that drink, I'm like, it's poison. He's gonna poison him. He's gonna do something bad to him. And I'm like, oh yay, he poisoned him, yay. Like I was not into the scene at all. The prison guard rushes in to see what's wrong. Stanley says Jimmy needs to get to a hospital immediately. And the cop reluctantly, he's literally just screaming at this cop. And the good thing is with this is like really the only like really big scene with Stanley tonight. We didn't get a lot of Stanley, which I was happy about because I don't like Stanley's character. I've said this before. I don't like his character. And basically, they take him to the hospital, but they don't take him to the hospital. It's with Stanley's, that guy that he's having sex with. That guy, he's dressed up as a paramedic. He's dressed up like a paramedic, and the second that they got into that truck, I'm like, there's no way that is a hospital. There's no way they're going to a hospital. So then, Jimmy wakes up and everything, and I'm like, his hands are gone. So it was so predictable. It was kind of a stupid way to start the episode, but after that, I really enjoyed the episode. Minus that scene, I love this episode. Minus that scene. That scene was very predictable, and that's really my only issue with the episode was that scene was very predictable. Other than that, I loved this episode. I thought this episode was fantastic. I loved everything that happened, and let's get to probably the thing that I think really fixed this show was Chester, Neil Patrick Harris's character, who I really, really was hoping would bring some sort of creepy momentum to this show because that's what the show needs. It needs some sort of creepy storyline, and Chester's storyline did exactly that. But let's first talk about Ben and Dot. We get this monologue with Ben Dot. Basically, Ben and Dot, what ends up happening is that they have finally just, they're finally accepting that they're in this freak show. They weren't really happy about it, but now they're finally accepting that they enjoy it. They enjoy being in this freak show. And now they're basically giving sex to people, and it's kind of fucked up, but it makes sense why. I mean, they tried to have sex with Jimmy, so it made sense why. They want to lose their virginity. Now, why was Beth's hair back to being like dark brown? Why was she not blonde? I don't understand. She wanted to be blonde and now she's not. Like, what made her change that? That was kind of an issue as well, but that's just a little thing. I'm not gonna nitpick too much on this episode because I really liked it. So they're interviewing potential candidates for the job. They have like this one guy who is like a midget, and he, in his custom, he doesn't kiss, he licks, and they find it disgusting. So they burn their diaries in an oil drum, as they no longer have any need to keep secrets from one another. And I thought that was actually a very good twist. So that's the last time we're going to see them with these journals, because now they're closer than ever. They decide that they need to be with they need to be by each other, and I thought that was just great. I love that they decided to burn those, because honestly what that did was it changed a lot of stuff here. So we're introduced to this new character, Chester, and the second he was introduced, I'm like, I'm gonna love his character. He is a traveling salesman. He strolls into the main tent and he's selling chameleons, and Ben and Dot walk into the main tent and are taken aback by him. They think he could be the guy that could help them with this job, and he tells them that he is a war veteran and he has a metal plate in his head. So he reveals that he's a magician and might like to join the show. He doesn't realize that it's a freak show. He thinks that this is simply a magic show. That's what he thinks. And I thought that was cool that we had a character. I didn't think we've had a character like that yet, where they thought that it was, it was actually not a freak show. But the thing is, he does belong in this freak show, and I'll explain why when we get to it. But let's get to the thing that actually, this was very surprising to me. They saved the Dell and Jimmy plot tonight. They saved it. I was this close to completely losing interest in that plot, but they saved it tonight. I don't know what they did, but this scene changed everything, and it made me really love Jimmy's character more. It made me like his character more. We finally got back to something that I loved, and I'm so happy we got back to it. So let's just get to this part. Dell visits Jimmy. He's obviously very upset because he has no idea where Jimmy's been. And what I love about Dell is that he's trying to be the father for Jimmy. He wants to be the father in his life. He wants to be there for Jimmy, and I like seeing that. So Jimmy fills him in on what happened with his hands, and Dell tells him that he should have never trusted such a lying prick, because he knows that, he knows Stanley's true secrets and everything. And there's a tray of food on the bedside table. Jimmy's hungry, politely asks father if he could help him out. He doesn't have hands and everything. And Dell, what I really like seeing in this episode was that, for the past few episodes, we've seen Dell go through a very vulnerable journey. We just haven't really explored it a lot. This episode, finally, we really showed a lot more of Dell's caring side. He really wants to be a good father to Jimmy. Even though he has a lot of anger problems, he really does want to be there for Jimmy, because he really does care about him. He does care about his son. He wants to be a father for him, and I think that's a very good storyline. So Jimmy actually reveals that he'd like to buy the show from Elsa when she leaves, because Elsa's leaving and he wants to buy the show from her. And Dell says that he loves that idea and that they could go in together on it, maybe make like a father-son act. And this makes him very excited. Now Jimmy asked Dell a question that I actually thought was very interesting, because I don't think we've actually had an answer to this, and I actually didn't even think about this. And I like that Jimmy asked him this, because I didn't really think about this. So I'm happy that Jimmy asked Dell this question. He says to Dell, why wasn't he born with the claws? And he basically says that he was the black sheep of the family. He didn't have, both his brother and father had the claws, but because he was born with 10 normal fingers, he was treated like the biggest freak of there ever was. That's why he's treated as a freak. And he admits that when his son was born with claws, he took one look at those hands and he made a run for it, because it brought back too many painful memories. Now it makes sense why he abandoned Jimmy all these years, because he was so terrified. Because think about it, he was ridiculed his whole life because he did not have those claws, and that just made his character so much more interesting for me. And I love that they did that, because the whole point of the season has been to get us to sympathize with each one of these characters, and this episode, it finally got back to doing that. I'm happy they did that, and we get probably one of the most adorable lines that Dell has said. Honestly, this line was kind of cheesy, but I thought it was very good. He said, he's like, I'm almost 50 years old, and here I am feeding my son for the first time, and I love seeing that, because he finally wants to be a father for him, and I loved seeing that. I thought that was a great scene with him, just great scene, and I love all the stuff with Dell tonight. Great stuff. So Chester's trying to persuade Elsa to let him into the show, but Elsa's like, "What are you doing?" Elsa's like, "Well, what are you doing? This is a freak show, not a magic show." He's teaching her all these tricks and everything, and basically tells him that there's really no room for him. And he brings out his puppet and he does his ventriloquism number, and his puppet, Marjorie, this puppet basically, her name is Marjorie, and Marjorie is played by Jamie Brewer, who I was so happy is back in the show, because I love Jamie Brewer in the show. She's such a great actress. I'm so happy she's back, and she also has done some very good stuff in the show. So basically, he asked her that if it'd simply be alright for him to sell his chameleons before the show, he'd split the profits with her. She tells him nobody wants to purchase baby lizards. He says that's not exactly true and shows Elsa his books filled with numbers. And Elsa's impressed with his bookkeeping skills, and he basically says that maybe he could warm up the crowd, basically be like an opening act for them. And basically he's pretty speechless, so he opens up, he expresses enthusiasm to his creepy puppet Marjorie, gets down on his knees to kiss Elsa's hands, and he's very happy. You can tell he has a big attachment to this puppet, though. However, the second that he introduced that puppet, I'm like, okay, there's definitely something going on between him and Marjorie. You can just tell there's something else going on that he doesn't want anyone else to know. You can just tell, and I didn't really know what it was at this point, but we then see what it is, because he's preparing his makeup for his first number, and he's hearing the voice of his puppet Marjorie in his mind. He's clearly suffering from some sort of mental disorder. He has that metal plate in his head. So, the puppet's like yelling at him and everything, and it's really like a real person to him. And I'm just like, what's going on here? I mean, at first I thought that Marjorie was like gonna take over, gonna like possess him or something, but luckily it actually was not that ridiculous. They actually made the storyline work, and this seemed like a ridiculous storyline. They could have easily made this really, really stupid, but for whatever reason, they actually made this work, and it actually made me very happy, because it seemed like all they've been doing is just taking the randomest of storylines and completely doing the stupidest stuff with them, completely butchering them. I mean, this is the time when the show starts to get terrible. It is. It is the time when the show starts to get really bad. Look at Coven, for example. This was the time when I did not like Coven. I remember episode 11, that was the episode that I ranted on. I did not like that episode. Different with this episode, though, and I like that they did that, because it's the other way around, it seems. The first half was okay. Maybe the second half is actually going to be really, really good, and I think that's what they're showing here. So, Chester's lashing out in anger. Paul comes by. He has no idea what's going on. He thinks that he's just talking to voices and everything. He says he's practicing an act and everything. So I thought that was a very well done scene. I definitely really enjoyed that. So Dell visits Elsa. He's obviously very mad. He should be. I mean, someone cut off his son's arms, hands, and there's nothing he can do about it. And he demands to know where Stanley is. He at this point wants to kill him. He wants to kill him. And Elsa has no idea what's going on. She's like, why would you want to kill Stanley and everything? And after he tells Elsa what Stanley encouraged Jimmy to do, Elsa tells Dell that he must get Jimmy out of the hospital before he's sent back to jail. He storms out of the tent. Basically, that's what they need to do. And they're planning on sending him back to jail. That's what they're planning on doing. And the doctor, by the way, was not going to help him. I forgot to say, the doctor was not going to help Jimmy because she was a victim of the Tupperware party massacre that he was framed for. That's why she wasn't going to help him. So, we also got a lot with Amazon Eve tonight, and I love that. Amazon Eve is the only one that actually seems willing to help Dell, and she wants to partner up with him and possibly help him out, because she can see that this is really bothering Dell, and she actually really wants to help him. And I gotta say, I really enjoyed this as well. I really enjoyed the bonding between Amazon Eve and Dell, but because I didn't think about it, they are extremely similar. They really are, and I like seeing that a lot. It was very well done, and basically, she follows Dell out, and the important thing is now that Jimmy may be rescued, and they have a plan, and I thought that was really good. I definitely really enjoyed their bonding, and I thought that was one of the best parts of the episode. So Chester visits the twins, and Bet is excited to see him, and he performs some, Bet's obviously excited to see him because, she wanted someone to have sex with, and he performs some magic and says that he's gotten them a present. It's a music box with 2 dancers inside. He also says that he found something else in the camp storage, a genuine magician's sawing box. He reveals the trick behind the sawing a person in half magic trick. I like they actually revealed that, because I never understood that. Basically, what you do is that what happens is that the woman like crouches down. She has to be like a contortionist. So I think that's really cool, actually, that they actually revealed that. Feel bad for people who have to go to magic shows now, because they know what actually happens. So Dot takes offense to this. He says that, the key to magic is distracting the audience, and Dot takes offense to this and as if it's because they're freaks. That's what she thinks. She thinks that he only wants to do this because they're freaks. And I actually love that he genuinely had feelings for them. He tells them that they're beautiful, and but while this is happening, though, he has this weird fantasy in his head. These 2 ladies are on a bed. They're going at it. They're having sex, and he watches, and he's holding Marjorie, and he has this really weird look on his face. And they had a lot of flashbacks in this episode. And honestly, I thought they were very, very well done. All the flashbacks in this episode were really, really good. And this was just, I was like, what is he hiding? Clearly, he's hiding something, and I could not tell what it was. And I thought that was just really, really big what they were trying to show. So the cops come for Jimmy, and he's loaded up and being transported in the back of a squad car. You know, they're telling him he's going back, but then we get probably one of the most awesome scenes in the show so far, because they finally reintroduce this plot. Amazon Eve jumps out the middle of the road, throws a rock at the windshield, causing the car to drive off the road. Cops get out with their guns. Dale jumps out of the bushes, knocks one out. Before Eve is shot by the second cop, Dell whacks him in the head, and he proceeds to hit. I honestly thought they were going to call off Amazon Eve, but they didn't. Dell whacks him in the head, proceeds to hit him until his skull is bashed in and destroyed. And this reminded me of the first episode. What was the point of this season? To show how the cops treat the freaks. And I love that we finally have this back, because this was what I wanted Jimmy's plot to be. And now they're doing it with Dell, which I really like, because I wanted this plot to be intact. I think it's very interesting. It's very thought provoking. It makes us care more for the characters, and I definitely really enjoyed it. And I'm glad they reintroduced that in this episode. Very, very good stuff. So the twins visit Chester in his trailer, and they basically tell him that they have decided that Chester is going to be the one to take their virginity. They want him to be the one to do it. He doesn't really know if he should do it, though. And he's freaking out. You know, his head starts to ache. There's like this weird high-pitched noise that's going on. He says it happens when he gets worked up, and you can tell there's something going on. And Beth says that, Beth's like, so you'd really involve me? And, she says that they've heard many man's fantasy. They can tell when a man is flirting with them. Um, and Marjorie, the puppy, saying not his, and Chester's telling her to shut up. And he's then taken back to that fantasy with the two women. One of the women, he's not really interacting with them. They're doing all the work themselves. And one of the women says that his puppet is creepy and basically tells him to come over there and everything, but he's not coming over. And back in the real world, though, he's agreed to have sex with them because he's clearly something happened in the past that he doesn't want to happen. So he decides to have sex with them because he genuinely does care about them, but he wants to have Marjorie close by for some reason. It's sort of like, he says it's like a coping mechanism. So Dot relaxes him, and basically she relaxes him, and Dot says whatever you need when he asks if he can join on the fun, and he has sex with them. And I was surprised that he didn't do anything to them. I thought he was gonna be some weird character that had some fucked up storyline, but no, he actually, something happened. I thought that was very, very good. So then we get something that was just awesome. We have not seen Dandy for the past 2 episodes, and finally we saw Dandy, and I gotta say, this scene was just awesome. I loved it. Private detective shows Danny pictures of the twins having sex with Chester. He starts crying and is upset, and he says they were supposed to be mine, and you actually feel bad for Dandy. I gotta say, I felt bad for Dandy in this episode. I did. Because Dandy really wanted to be with them. He really did love them, and you gotta feel bad for the guy. So I thought that was a very well done scene. I definitely really enjoyed that. Very, very good stuff there. So Chester's trying to put Marjorie back in her crate, but she's not allowing it, and we're taken back into the past, and we see that his wife's lover, the other woman that was on the bed, has stolen his doll. And we find out that this is his wife. Chester's grown furious, especially when the woman tells him that he's off his rocker. She tells him that he's sick in the head. He has a vision of Marjorie, and basically what ended up happening was he has a vision of Marjorie in human form, who tells him that they need to get rid of her and the wife. So he's worried that he doesn't want the same thing to happen again. So he's very worried about what's going to happen to Marjorie. He's very worried that's going to happen again. So Paul comes in to talk to Chester about the stay in the future of the show, and it turns out that Chester actually purchased the show and company from Elsa, because of course Elsa's leaving, and Chester is going to be the new owner. So I think that's a very good twist, but the thing is, there's clearly something going on with Chester. I want things to go well for Chester, I do. I want him to overcome this, but this is American Horror Story. I don't think he's going to overcome this. I want him to, though. I definitely do, but I don't think he's going to. We'll have to see what happens. So Chester's talking with Elsa. He asks her if she's planning on taking all of her things in the tent with her to Hollywood. She tells him no, but also asks if this stuff's a bit too feminine for his taste, and he says that he thinks this tent will belong to Marjorie in the future. And Elsa's looking at him like, what the hell? It's a puppet. Like, she doesn't understand his attachment. So, basically, make a long story short, he confirms that Marjorie will be the headlining act. They're going to be the headliners now. Because, the twins are really, they just want to be a part of the show. They don't really care if they're the headliners or not. Chester returns to his trailer to tell Marjorie the news, but Marjorie's not there. She's been stolen from her crates, and when that happened, I'm like, oh shit, it's gonna happen again. And I did not know what was gonna happen. He's freaking out. He thinks the same thing's gonna happen again, and that was huge. So, in a scene that's very similar to episode 2, the cops come, they raid the camp looking for Jimmy. They think they're harboring him, and they're like tear the place apart and everything. And meanwhile, Chester cannot find Marjorie. But he finds out that he runs into Dandy. Dandy took Marjorie. And this is sort of Dandy's like proposition with Chester. And Dandy just in this episode, obviously, always awesome, but even more awesome in this episode. He tells him that Marjorie ran away because she was upset with what he did with the twins. Danny also tells Chester that Marjorie's going to tell everyone what happened to his wife and her lover. Danny got all this information from his detective friend. That's what he's been doing. And Danny tells Chester that Marjorie's in the Big Ten. Chester runs in, basically he says that he didn't take Marjorie, and Chester runs in to find Marjorie in the Big Tent, and she says that she wants him to saw the twins in half for real, and he has to do this. And I knew this was coming. I knew we were going to get a storyline with this, but I like that Chester's want to do it and not Stanley. If Stanley was doing this, I would be completely out of this plot. I wouldn't give two shits about this because all Stanley does is he kills people with a big grin on his face and then he goes away. That's what it seems like his purpose is on this show. But now we have Chester doing it, someone that genuinely cares about them. I'm actually looking forward to seeing where this is going to go, and this could actually be a very interesting storyline, and I want to see where they take this. This is going to be very cool, and I can't wait to see what they do with this. I'm definitely looking forward to this storyline. So, Elsa then gets a visit from Maggie. So that's basically the end of Chester's storyline. So we get to the end of the episode, and I gotta say, the end of the episode was amazing. But then we see Maggie, and I'm like, oh shit, not Maggie. Luckily, she's there for like 1 second. She tells her that there's something she needs to see, and this was just awesome. Dell returns to his trailer, and Desiree's also back, and she says that there's no more time for lies. She doesn't want any more lies. She holds him at gunpoint. She wants to admit who he killed and how. And Maggie shows Elsa Ma Petite's body in the glass jar, and I gotta say, I actually like Desiree and Maggie working together now. I didn't think it was a good idea, but what they do to Dell, I actually like because again, it makes us care more for Dell. And Dell's breaking down in tears. He says he killed Ma Petite and he smothered her and he's pissed. He's really upset about it. He so regrets it. And just as soon as that happens, someone shoots him. But it's not Desiree. It's Elsa. And you can see, I knew that Elsa was going to do it. The second that she started breaking down, I knew that Elsa was going to freak out. And she said, that's all I need to hear. And that's how the episode ends. So, holy shit, what an incredible way to end this episode. What an amazing episode. Honestly, this was their comeback episode. American Horror Story is back. This is what American Horror Story needs to be. Good emotional storylines, good characters that are very fleshed out, not romantic stuff. There really was no love triangles in this episode. We did have the thing with Chester, Ben Dot, and Dandy, but that actually works. It actually makes sense. It's better than Jimmy, Dandy, and Ben Dot. If they want to abandon that plot, be my guest, because I'm not into that anymore. I'm not. If they want to abandon that, go ahead. I don't care. Now, as far as Jimmy wanted to, own the compound. That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to get it from Elsa, but now Chester's doing it. So maybe he can negotiate something with Chester. I could definitely see Jimmy doing that. He's definitely the negotiating type. So I definitely feel now that this whole cops versus freaks thing is back, and now they're gonna go after the people that try to hurt them. I definitely think that Jimmy's gonna try to do that again. In many ways, Jimmy's gonna turn out like Elsa, because Elsa lost both of her legs. Jimmy lost both of his hands, and I don't know if that was like an intentional thing, but I just realized that they're gonna end up being very similar. I mean, Jimmy doesn't really like Elsa, but that's who she's going to become. And I definitely feel that soon Elsa's going to find out Stanley's true intentions. She just has to. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen when that happens. I don't think it's going to end up well for Elsa, but we'll have to see what happens there. She doesn't realize that Stanley was the one behind this, that he told Dell to do it. Elsa has no idea that Stanley was the one to do it, and she's going to feel, like, terrible when she realizes that she has been trusting this man this whole time who is betraying her. I really hope that Maggie just tells her the truth, because if she could tell Desiree the truth with no problem, I mean, that reveal seemed really stupid. It really seemed like nothing. And now I'm actually happy they did the reveal. I really wanted them to wait till this episode, but now that it happened, I'm actually happy it happened, because now Dell's dead, and honestly, his death was very satisfying, because we really saw a lot with his character in this episode, and it wasn't just a pointless death that meant nothing to the show. I mean, there are so many deaths this season that didn't really mean anything. Ma Petite's death was very, very good, very well done, but it did a lot of stuff, but Ethel, like, she did not need to die, but Dell, I was happy that he died because we finally got a fleshed out character from Dell, and I think it was just so well done. Is Chester really gonna do this to Ben and Dot? Is he really gonna saw them in half? I don't know. We'll have to see what happens there. Marjorie looks like is gonna try to egg him on. Gonna try to find. Looks like in the next episode that's what she's gonna try to do. Just awesome stuff. I love his character now. Is Ben Doc gonna realize what's actually going on? Is he possibly gonna have them maybe take down Marjorie? I don't know. That's gonna be interesting to see if that's what's going on there. Are they gonna find out what's really going on with Marjorie? How does Dandy fit into all this? I kind of feel like Dandy is gonna work with Marjorie, or what Danny's gonna do is he told Marjorie to tell Chester to do this to distract him, and he's gonna try to get a second chance with Ben and Dot. However, I know if he tries to get a second chance, then they're not gonna want Dandy because he tried to, he was gonna saw him in half, and they don't want that anymore. So I definitely think that they don't want that really. So I also really loved seeing the cops running the camp. That's gonna be very interesting to see is what's Jimmy gonna do about that. We'll have to see what happens there. Um, we have 2 episodes left, and honestly, I'm very excited for them. I'm very excited. I didn't think I was gonna be, but I'm very excited. And if Maggie doesn't die, I'm fine with that. Maggie's character I'm fine with now. She wasn't annoying in this episode. She actually had good stuff to do, and I'm happy that she's not annoying. But this episode was completely the comeback episode for me. This is what American Horror Story needs to be. Let me know what you guys saw this episode. Honestly, this was probably the most surprising episode so far. Absolutely loved it. And minus that first scene. The first scene was like, too predictable. And the fact that Bet's hair, they didn't explain why she went from blonde to brown, that was just weird to me. But that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoy it. I'll see you guys in my next video, which will be my review for the series premiere of Empire, because I do want to watch that. I'm not reviewing the season, but I am reviewing the first episode. I'm going to do what I did with Gallivant with Empire. I'll see you guys in my next video. Okay, bye.